Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday night nonfiction book club, post-apocalyptic. So tonight we're going to be doing part two. Actually, it'll be the third night of Jonathan Hollerman's presentation to Congress on grid down death of a nation, and basically his projections of what he thinks will happen to the U.S. should we experience a grid down event. Now, that could be from several different reasons. It could be because of EMP. It could be because of a CME. It could be, terrorism taking out up to 7 or more of our major transfer stations everywhere. So, lots of reasons why the grid could go down. And, we're looking at weather conditions right now that could take the grid down this evening. ERCOT, the Electrical Reliability Council of Texas, is asking us once again tomorrow morning between 6 and 10 to restrict our usage of electricity. It's 18 degrees right now. That's why I'm kind of wearing a warm-up jacket inside the house, trying to conserve a little bit of energy and at the same time, help out with the electricity usage. Although I do have the light, but it is what it is. So we're doing our part to try to help. Okay, South Florida DCL, welcome. Good evening. Cats and Prepping, good evening to you as well. It looks like we have 5 people watching right now, 2 in the chat. So yeah, that's and that is not typical for Central Texas at all. We've got every spigot in the house. Hello, Holly. We've got every spigot in the house is dripping because we don't put our water pipes very far underground because we just don't need to. We don't have freezes that often. So when it does freeze, we drip the lines to keep a little bit of water going through the pipes and just keep them from freezing. So we've got that going on, and some other things that just trying to keep the pipes from freezing and keep our house safe and warm. Okay, golly. We had a great dinner. We went to Longhorn Steakhouse, and but gosh, let me tell you, anniversary dinners have gotten expensive. Tonight, this afternoon, we spent $82 for steaks, and Longhorn Steakhouse has some fantastic Brussels sprouts. Really, really love their Brussels sprouts. Love their Tunions, which is basically their little onion chips. So it was a good time. Hello, Diana, too. Welcome. And I think I already said hi to Holly. Okay, so let's talk about this. If you think last week was depressing, golly, this week is super depressing, so I'm not going to focus on it too much. I do have some things tabbed I want to talk about. I do have some things highlighted I want to talk about. Hello, Little Lone Prepper. Welcome. But I don't want to get into it too much because basically he's talking about historical evidence of human desperation, starvation, and living in a world without rule of law. So these are all historical things that have happened, and we're going to focus on 1 or 2 of those, simply because I am of the opinion that we learn from people who have been there, done that, and not from speculative things. And I'll give you a couple examples of that as we go further in. So the first one he talks about is the Great Chinese Famine in 1958 to 1963. 1962, 1963, supposedly somewhere between 43 and 46 million people died of starvation under Mao's great move forward, his I forget what it's called now. Oh well. They were eating Guanyin soil, named after the goddess of mercy. And some of these soils that they were eating acted as a cement, basically, inside the body. Welcome, Faxorus. Devil Dog Prepper, welcome to you, too. Wow, 6 degrees with a wind chill of 14. I was telling everybody it's 18 here, which is abnormally cold. But gosh, I would much rather have the cold where I can put more clothing on, like I'm doing tonight, than the heat of the summer where you can't take everything, regardless how much you take off, it's still uncomfortable, But I guess more people die of cold exposure than they do of heat exposure. So anyhow, he does talk about and the amount of mental illness that happens during some of these great deprivations, like the Mao's Guangdong and everything. He talks about the Holocaust that took place, basically World War II era. He talks about the Diary of Mary Berg, and one of the things that she has in her diary is, and this is growing up in the Warsaw Ghetto, the 75th anniversary edition of Surviving the Warsaw Ghetto. But typhus ran rampant during the Warsaw Ghetto. And that's one of the things that scares me the most. That's why I have Jace, and I also have Contingency up here, Contingency and Jace Medical. And I encourage you, if you can afford it, get it. Because I think that, when SHTF happens, and it may just be a gradual thing, it may be a sudden thing, we don't know. But one of the things I am afraid of is my neighbors may not have their sanitation taken care of. And so that may spill over. And if it does, I want to be prepared for that. I want to be prepared with the antibiotics to take care of my family from any of the communicable diseases, demics, if you will, that may spread as a result of lack of sanitation in a post-apocalyptic world. So she talks about typhus. Like I said in some of my previous editions, we used to be in a municipal utility district that had a electric strike hit our pumping station for our sewage system, and it basically sucked all that up to a higher elevation than it gravity fed down into the city of Austin. Well, when the lightning struck the pump station, all of that sewage backed up and got into our drinking water supply. And so we had a family member who was the first confirmed case of cryptosporidiosis. And CDC came to the house at 10 o'clock at night. They flew in from Atlanta. It looked just like Scully and Mulder, and the X-Files was really popular back then. This is in the late 90s, and it was something else. And so seeing the neighborhood, we had, I think, 183 people get cryptosporidiosis as a result of exposure to sewage in the drinking water. Oh, my T-shirt's a little bit crooked. Golly. Oh, well, I'm not going to worry about it. We won't worry about it that much, will we? Everything's backwards in the camera. Okay, there we go. Maybe that's a little bit better. New Jersey has snow. Welcome, Holly. Isn't that fantastic? Pennsylvania preparedness, hey all. Trying to. We had somebody on here. It's got me, Bree. We're at 18. They were at in a negative numbers. So James Trump, 24 price. Frozen East Tennessee mountains. So let me tell you, I really enjoyed my time. I opened the Dell factories in Lebanon and in Nashville airport. So I got to spend a little bit of time there in Lebanon, Tennessee, and ate at the original Cracker Barrel. That was quite an experience. That was a great time. I really enjoyed that. That was a great trip. So the Diary of Mary Berg, Notes from the Warsaw Ghetto by Emanuel Ringelblum. The ones, and then of course the Balkan Wars from 1992 to 1995. That was right after I retired. They almost called me back to active duty for that. Hello, Sumi, welcome. I talk and I say, hey guys, if we're going to listen to somebody about prepping, listen to people who have been there, done that. And I can name a couple who are writing prolifically and talking about their experiences of surviving real world SHTF environment. So the first one, of course, is the one that's mentioned in the book, and that's Selko Begovic in his time in Bosnia during the Balkan Wars, 92 to 95. And so, he's got several books out. They have SHTF survival stories in this book. He has Dark Secrets. He has Survival Boot Camp. He has several different books, and he talks about a lot of different things. If you want to know why, I did a video here recently where I showed my stash of matches, my stash of lighters. That's because of this book. He says that they became very, very important commodities. Another one is if you look in my pantry, in my closet, in the bathroom, the master bathroom, you'll find that the entire bottom is nothing but candles, emergency candles, and because of this book. So, when I look at my preparations, it's because I'm reading people who have lived through it, and they tell me this was valuable for us. This is going to be extremely valuable. He talks about a guy who got 1 regimen of doxycycline for his wife for 1 ounce of gold. Now, 1 ounce of gold right now is about $3,000. Okay. So it was important enough for him to get that doxycycline for his wife that he was willing to pay $3,000 for a 5-day treatment with antibiotics for his wife. So, we've got these naysayers who say don't invest in gold and silver because you can't eat it. And I think that's the worst trite expression I've ever heard in my life, because you can't eat a knife, you can't eat a mess kit, there's lots of things you can't eat, but we have them. Okay. So it's just I don't want to be unkind or disrespectful. It doesn't make any sense. How's that? Using that kind of logic does not make any sense at all. Selko Begovic talks about, yes, you need precious metals. They wanted US dollars. I'm not so sure US dollars are going to have that much value here. I will say cash might have some value during different stages of the timeline. I probably would not want to have anything larger than a $20 bill. So hello, Utah Mike, welcome. Glad you're in a heated basement. Glad you're in a heated area. Venezuela Prepper has some writings out that are pretty good as well. And then you've got Furfall Aguirre. He has a couple books out. His is Surviving the Economic Collapse, and then Street Survival Skills, I think is the other book. I only brought in a couple. The books I've got to show you, Helen's upset that I've taken over the entire dining room here with my show and tell this evening about this portion of the stories tonight. So let's read one paragraph out of this, and it says the easiest way to explain it would be to say that almost everyone did things that normal people in normal times could not accept as normal behavior. But comparing to other people's actions, it was nothing. It was like the scale of what is good and bad moved all the way together for everyone. Facing all the killing and misery, even smoking marijuana became accepted by everyone. Humans looked for an escape. Alcohol was extremely precious too. So I because of this story and this book, when I read it a long time ago, this probably, oh gosh, when was it? Can I say it was probably right at the millennium. I started investing in those little bitty I call them airplane bottles of whiskey, because I didn't want to have a big bottle that I would be using as barter, but I had the little bitty bottles. So I probably got 2 big tubs of the little bitty jars of vodka, rum, whiskey, tequila, just a cacophony of things. I can also put 1 or 2 in my pockets and use that when I go out to barter so that nobody knows what I have or how much of it I have. And, you don't want to expose too much of what you do have when you go out to barter. So, I think that's going to be one of those good things as well. Oh, wow. Works from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I had my semi-annual cleaning, the dental cleaning this morning, and they called me yesterday and said, could I move it to 9 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock because they were afraid that the roads would be covered in ice. There was a big wreck, lots of vehicles involved, but I made it there safe and got there a half hour early. So I got to drink lots of good free coffee. Okay. Continuing on with Selko, and he probably has about 8 pages in Jonathan's book. So to finish and educated as opposed to shock you, many folks cannot think too clearly about being involved in the level of violence I described. And this is talking about the Balkan Wars. Maybe you think SHTF is just like Black Friday shopping, but every day. So let me just give you some examples of how the world I lived in descended from normal. Remember, I lived in a regular city in a nice country in Europe less than 25 years ago. And I'm on page 35 of the book for those of you who are in the book. And it says, people who never used violence before were committing hard violence. Normal people, dads, moms, killing people in order to save their families. Bullet 2, certain groups of people who looked like they just waited for SHTF. Those people are here. I differentiate. When I joined my group, and I'm a member of 2 or 3, I wanted groups that were not militia oriented. I think the militia types are looking for a chance to use those militia skills and maybe use them on other people. I am not interested in militia. Now, we may have to use defensive skills to protect ourselves, but to go into small unit tactics and everything else and focus on those at the exclusion of some of the other things I think are far more important in an SHTF environment. When I found a group that was militia oriented, I just did not participate. That's my choice. You may think different, but maybe being in a militia might be the best thing if it's a large group, especially. So they can go out, crawl out from beneath their rocks and fulfill their own fantasies about being kings of the town, imprisoning people, doing things to women, torturing folks in the weirdest ways. Bullet point number 3, strange groups organizing in whatever cause they choose to name. Again, only to gain power in order to have more resources. Sometimes there's just gangs of people, sometimes whole militias of thousands of people, through terror over other people or groups of people. And then 4th, irrational hate towards others, whoever the other might be, another religion, group, street, town, nation, because it's very easy to manipulate groups of people through hate and fear from and towards others. If someone manipulates you to believe that your kid is hungry because of the others, he can do a lot with you to eradicate those others. So, then he goes into some really horrible things that he saw that we can't talk about on YouTube. Then we have the story of the Holodomor, and that brings me to a point. So whenever you see a Slavic word that begins with or that has a KH in it anywhere in the word, the KH is a transliteration of, here's a piece of paper. So let me give you this letter. It's Ch. Chariton is the phonetic alphabet name for it. Let me get this will do well. So Chariton looks like this. Looks like an X, okay? So you got backward C and a forward C together. And that's Chariton, H. And so the way that we transliterate Ch is KH. So whenever you see KH together, it's not a K, it's Ch. So Holodomor, and in this case, it's they didn't put the K there, but it's Holodomor. So that was from 1932 to 1933. Stalin was trying to starve out all the Ukrainians. Millions of Ukrainians starved to death because of the Holodomor, the cleansing of the ethnic Ukrainians by Stalin. Then he's got another book, Execution by Hunger by Mira Safety, and that's the same thing. He calls it the hidden Holocaust, the starvation of Ukraine. And actually it's Ukraine, but we'll use the American pronunciation, Ukraine. And then Red Famine by Anne Applebaum is another one that gives the examples of starvation under Stalin. It's just unbelievable. That one goes on for about 12 pages. And then he kind of wraps it up with some 4 points of discussion, historical examples of starvation. So point number 1, the historical examples provided prove that there are similar physical and psychological human responses to starvation, even in different locations around the world, different historical periods and different cultures. Now, the next one I want to talk about a little bit more in detail. Number 2, the people living through the examples I provided had life and basic survival skills that are quite rare in America and quickly disappearing. How many Americans know they need to boil water before drinking it once the water system goes down, is the implication there, let alone know how to start a fire to do that in the first place. And so for those of you who are following along in the book, I'm now on page 54. To boil the water. How many Americans could forage in the forest for food? Oh, I forgot to bring a foraging book. I've got a beautiful big foraging book that was sent to me by Maggie. It's wonderful. I am not a forager, so this is one of those books I got to carry with me if I go out foraging. How many Americans could forage in the forest for food and identify edible plants as opposed to poisonous ones? I can't. So Maggie knows that. I talked about that in one of the other lives. Maggie sent me a fantastic book on it. How many Americans know how to grow their own food? I don't. I'm still learning. Big, massive learning curve. We're going to get to a point here where he's going to make some recommendations. And I'm going to say those recommendations fall flat as far as I'm concerned. This is the reason why. How many Americans know how to grow their own food, let alone store or root cellar it through the winter, or even have the seed and basic supplies and hand tools needed to do so? The learning curve is so steep in how to grow food, how to protect it against insects and diseases and everything else. It is unbelievable. I've been trying now since we bought this house 6 years ago, and I'm still not a good gardener. And I'm trying to learn more and more each year, but gosh, I suck at it. And so I am not going to be able to produce enough food to feed me and Helen. That's the simple truth. I've got to have enough food on hand to keep us alive while I learn how to garden, if you can imagine that. And I think most people are probably in that same level of experience where they'll be willing to learn, but the learning curve is just terrible. So we're going to have to live until we learn how to do it. So Sumi says, I do. And that's probably, she knows how to garden, knows how to forage. You see, frightening that starvation is such a popular technique for political leaders. Isn't that the truth, cats and prepping? And Goshen Prepping put out a video earlier today. And he follows a company that predicts shortages in the supply chain and for stores and things like that. And they're talking about food shortages most likely. This is starting to happen here very shortly. So let me see. Sumi says, I imagine gardening is quite challenging in the Texas heat. Absolutely. And so I brought my bell peppers up here. They survived. I've got a couple of bell peppers going. I brought them up here and to cover them to protect them from the freeze. Didn't work. I've lost my bell peppers. I've lost my tomatoes and my bell peppers. And usually our winters are mild enough to where those can be basically continue to grow up until the spring. And but no, the summers here are just unbearable. Okay, so bullet point number 4. How many people have a large enough pantry to survive up until a year until their gardens begin to flourish? I say bull hockey. You're probably going to need 2 or 3 years worth of food storage until you produce enough food from your garden to feed you. There's a guy named Eric, and he has a fantastic home gardening, food gardening channel called Epic Gardening. He's in San Diego. So he did an experiment one summer. He has a 1/4 acre that he planted with wheat, and he wanted to see how much wheat he could get and what he could do with it. And his 1/4 acre of wheat produced just enough wheat to make 2 loaves of bread. So take that as a lesson. we probably, those of us here in suburban or urban environments, do not have enough room to have the size of a crop that's going to be necessary to feed our family. So we're going to have to find other ways to do that. So, probably having our neighbors meet with us and help us, and for them to grow too, because the more space we have, the more we can feed. That's all there is. Have I invested in shade cloth? No, I haven't. I need to. What I did was I moved it up. I've got a pretty nice patio, so I moved it under the patio. I experimented and moved my tower garden under the patio to try to provide it some shade, but then it deprived it of the vitamin E that it needs from the sunlight. So I think shade cloth is probably that intermediate area, because the roof of the patio provided too much shade. Out in the sun is too much. And as a matter of fact, it's even caused the plastic to start disintegrating. The heat has. Those blue tarps that you use to cover things, those only last one summer here in Texas. That will start disintegrating after one summer. So good evening, South Florida DCL. Welcome. I saw you were number one on earlier. I said hi to you earlier, but I guess you were away from the keyboard for a couple of minutes. So Sumi says, I'm looking into expanding and what I am growing to include corn and wheat and a few others grains for feeding the chickens. Absolutely. There's a grain called amaranth. I've been exploring that a lot. Evidently, it's far more productive than wheat and can be used like wheat to make flour. So they say that for prepping and survival purposes, that growing amaranth is probably better than growing wheat. I'm looking into that. I know I don't have enough space for corn. I know that. However, there is a cornfield not even a quarter mile from here. I'm going to say probably a good, easy 20 acres of corn. So hopefully he'll survive and he'll have acres and acres of corn. And then I can hopefully trade with him for stuff. Quail. Utah Mike says quail. So here's Lee's personal opinion, okay, about quail. Quail season here, pheasant season here is only about 3 weeks in the spring and 3 weeks in the summer. I'm sorry, spring and fall, because we're on the migratory route. Quail's a little bit better than pheasant, but in all reality, if you're a perfect shot, I don't know about you, but it takes about 3 pheasant to feed me, because they're so small. Quail probably is going to be about the same thing. Okay, so now imagine perfect shot. You get one every time you pull the trigger with your shotgun. So if you're going to eat one a day for 365 days for a year, that means you're going to need 365 shells just for one person. Now, multiply that times the number of people in your family. Now, if you want to eat more than one meal a day, start multiplying that. So when you start taking a look at birds as what you're going to be eating, and that is migratory flight birds, number one, they're only going to be available for certain small periods of time during the year. And number two, you're probably going to have to do your own reloading. Because I don't think anybody has the stockpile of ammo that's going to be needed to feed their family with migratory birds for a full year. So chickens will eat just about anything. So I wouldn't prep too hard for them if you can let them forage.
Free range.
If you're growing quail yourself, yes. I haven't looked into that. Being in suburbia, having the ability to grow or any kind of livestock, chickens, quail, anything in the backyard is prohibited by the HOA. So I really haven't looked into most of that other stuff. So Pat Butler does most of her gardening on the back covered deck because of being on a walk for short distances in the house. Easier to water and take care of plants for me. Absolutely. So Sumi is in agreement about the amaranth. Utah Mike, you're exactly right. You're reading my notes, and I haven't gotten there yet, but we'll get there. You are so right, and we'll get to that here in just a second. So Cats and Prepping says, I accidentally planted amaranth one year in the garden, and people thought it was something illegal. But once again, we're talking about the migratory birds having very specific times when they fly over. So that's a good solution, a fantastic solution for the limited amount of time that they fly over, whether they're migrating north or south. That's usually going to be somewhere in the vicinity of 2 to 4 weeks. We have a duck pond where we used to live, and they had ducks there 365 days a year. It was just really great. Some of them decided they liked the hot weather here in Texas, I guess. Bunnies, I have heard that. I was talking to a lady. That's one of the primary reasons I go to the farmer's market every Saturday morning, is just maintain relationships. Used to go to 4. 2 of them have failed. Now I just go to 2. But I want to have that close relationship with the farmers. I was talking to this one lady, and she said that goats and rabbits are what she is primarily growing for survival purposes. I said, well, I can't do goats, but I probably do rabbits, in the backyard. Could probably get away with that. They don't make that much noise. The one thing I don't like about rabbits, this area, they call it Rabbit Hill because there are so many wild rabbits in the area. And one of my chihuahuas, the 15-year-old, likes rabbit poop, and so that quite often gives her the runs. And I guess it's a canine version of cryptosporidiosis or something. I don't know, but I tell you what, I got to keep that the fecal matter from the rabbits away from the dogs. Okay. Okay, so then the final point that he makes is how many people know what size garden they'll need to feed their entire family until the following harvest season. And that's that thing I was talking about with Eric from Epic Gardening. Bullet point number 3 that he talks about here, and now I'm on page 55. Can you trust the people around you when the entire country begins to starve? Are they going to run out of food before you do? And what will they, and now this is Lee's correlation to this, what will they be willing to do to get your food if it means them staying alive? So, there was a fantastic Twilight Zone called The Bunker. I think is the name of it, or The Shelter, one or the other. But this family sitting they're playing cards on a Saturday night, and there's 3 different families, and all of a sudden the air raid warnings and everything sound, and the one family goes into their bomb shelter down in the basement. The other 2 families are doing everything they can to get in there. Then they find out it's a false alarm, and they come out. Boy, did that change relationships, because no, we're not going to let our best friends in with us in the shelter because we only have enough food and water and air and everything else for my family for 2 weeks. If you come in, we won't all survive. And so that's that environment. People you consider close friends right now, if it comes down to a life and death situation, they'll be more than willing to sacrifice you so that their family can survive. And that's one of the realities that we have to face. So that's why you need to establish those relationships with people before SHTF and not during or after. Build up that trust so that people can help each other. Let me see where we are. Utah Mike says that rabbits are low in fat and you're going to need fat for calories. Absolutely. Cousins have gotten 6 deer on the property last year without even trying. Turkeys are on the land also. Fantastic. I'm envious. But I'm also afraid there's a whole bunch of urbanites who have never had a weapon in their hands in their life are going to go out and they're going to decimate the wild meat population, and it's going to spoil because, number one, they don't know how to take care of it. They don't know how to field dress it. They don't know how to butcher it. They don't know how to preserve it. So I think there's going to be an awful lot of waste when it comes to the wildlife in the area. So Little on Pepper prefers doves over rabbits. I like dove too, but like I said, doves are so small that you need 3 of them to make a meal per person, per adult. Rabbits are not good for long-term single source of protein. If one has every wild game, they need to start to learn how to cook clean. Absolutely, I was just talking about that. You're absolutely correct, and I'll do a little bit further on that here in just a minute. Yeah, wild game population is going to be decimated, if not extinguished. Absolutely, I wholeheartedly agree. I assume he saw that show, that episode of the Twilight Zone. If you're in Florida, you can eat the iguanas. Oh wow. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And he's got a really fantastic chart. I love this chart. This chart kind of brings everything to fruition, and we are on page 57. So this is why a famine in 21st century America will be far worse than the historical famines. Number one, the mass population does not have the basic life skills in 2020s, okay, that we had back in the 1930s and 40s. Okay, just think, in 1933 is when we started getting rural electrification here in the US. So we haven't had electricity in the outer regions of the US for even 90 years yet. It's only 90 years old. But life has changed an awful lot. Refrigeration, air conditioning, electric tools. I mean, all kinds of things have changed. So a lot of those skills that the pioneers had, that the cowboys had, those are lost. And there's a book out called The Lost Ways. I strongly encourage you get it. Great book, and it'll teach you a lot of things that are going to be important to you in a post-apocalyptic world without electricity. So, and number two, there is not the same level of moral integrity, work ethic, and self-reliance today as with previous societies. So Mr. Hollerman has these 3 circles, that graph I kind of showed you, and the 3 circles overlap. And so he says, one is starvation. So the Chinese famine in Holodomor, and then the next one is without rule of law, and that's going to be Somalia, the Vikings, the Balkan Wars. And then he's got desperation, which we see in, for example, Hurricane Katrina, Rita, Superstorm Sandy, Wilma. When all 3 of those intersect in that center area, man, oh man, that's total chaos. And it's going to be hard to survive in that kind of an environment. So then he gives a whole bunch, 2 or 3 pages of great books that he recommends before he gets into his conclusion. And we'll be talking about the conclusion next week. But so get your library now, and I'm going to show you some things that you're going to need. So some of the books that I'm going to recommend to you: learn how to can and have good canning equipment so that you can preserve stuff. Now, part of that canning, I have a system that I purchased a long time ago. As a matter of fact, I have 2 of them, called a pump and seal. Okay, so for things, and I'll show you an example of what I've done. For things that do not have, you don't have to pressure seal to a great extent. This is a very good solution. So you have these little tabs, okay, and then you put a hole in the top of your canning jar or whatever. I'll show you. I'm using soda bottles. Then you have a pump, and this pump sucks all the air out of the jar, so that you're basically using it to can. So the way I use it, I got 2 because I wanted to make sure I had at least 200 of those little things on top. So here's the little thing you put on top. Now let me see if I can get it here where you can see it. There you go. So basically, it's a little rubber flap. And so as the air comes out, the flap goes this way, and the air comes out. And then when you release the pressure on it, it goes back down and it seals it. So you can see how it sucked all the air out of this 2-liter soda bottle. So I have rice that is now vacuum sealed inside a 2-liter bottle. Now, I just recently did this one. This is a 3-liter bottle, and every time I do the 3-liter bottle, for some reason it fails. It's probably the flap. But you can also do the same thing with pinto beans, with red beans, butter beans, lima beans, everything else. Fantastic system. You can also use, if you have a vacuum sealer, it has an adapter that you can use and put over the top and suck the air out that way. So canning. Make sure you have the ability to store things for a long period of time, especially if you're going to do gardening. You want to be able to can and preserve a lot of those things that you're going to be growing in your garden. Theoxorus says, I think the main takeaway is have enough stored food to last while competition declines. And after that, you can worry less about scents and maybe wild game will recover somewhat. Absolutely correct. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Sumi says, yes, that she agrees with his conclusion that our ethics, morality have changed a lot. Just north of us, up in Comanche County, Texas, which is about 4 or 5 counties north of us, that used to be the single greatest peanut production crop in the U.S. They don't grow any peanuts anymore, hardly. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm being corrected by Helen, so I guess I'm going to have to look it up.
I'm not correcting you.
Let me see. And then San Saba County, just west of here, about 2 or 3 counties west of here, is one of the largest pecan growing areas in the U.S. Yes, Mylar bags are fantastic. And if you have a vacuum sealer, I forget the name of mine, but if you have a vacuum sealer, you can use that for the Mylar bags. So what you can do is throw in an oxygen absorber, then throw your Mylar bag on the vacuum sealer, suck everything out. It's going to be double good for you. Then you can also use the heat sealer on that to seal it. That's what I do. So that's double protection. Then I'll put it inside of a 5-gallon bucket, and then I'll put some dry ice on top of it. Now remember, dry ice, when it melts, is heavier than air. So what happens is you've got carbon dioxide filling up that bucket and pulling all the air out. And so that's a double, triple way of preserving things that you want to have preserved for a long time. And then I have my month gardening in Texas. So when do you do what with what stuff? I forget who mentioned it, but this is going to be critical. Basic butchering of livestock and game. So field dressing it to get it back, and then how do you butcher it, and how do you prepare it, and how do you preserve it? So speaking of preserving, I just forwarded a fantastic video I watched on salt curing and smoking bacon. So if you get a chance to see that, that was fantastic. Food storage, this goes into a whole bunch of stuff to include canning and pressures and times and everything else. The Emergency Food Storage and Survival Handbook. Then another one is, I think people have some misidentified priorities as far as fishing and hunting. So number one, we talked about wild birds. I don't think anybody has enough shotgun shells to feed their family exclusively off of wild birds. Then the same thing with hunting. I think that the hunting wildlife is going to be just terrible. People are going to be, just decimate the wildlife. Fishing. A lot of people think they're going to go fishing, so they think they're going to get a nice casting rod and sit there on the bank of the river for 8 hours a day fishing and feed their family that way. Don't do that. The best thing you can do is create a fish trap, or depend upon nets. So I have some gill nets. Typically, you're going to use that for the smaller pan fry fish. But in a survival situation, you're going to create areas where you're going to put your nets, and you're going to have your fish come in that way. So you're having somebody else, the net or the trap, do the work for you while you're out doing other things, because keeping in wood, water, taking care of sanitation and all these other deals is going to be taking up so much of your time that you're not going to have a whole bunch of time to go out fishing, sitting on the side of the stream. So, books like this, the Total Fishing Guide, how to catch giant bass with Texas rig or the Carolina rig or something like that. I just don't think you're going to have the time to do that. Then you have The Urban Farmer, Curtis Stone, which is a fantastic book. He's got a good channel as well. So all kinds of good books. Make sure you get a good library on how you're going to plan for the food recovery of your family over time. Let me catch up here. Great. I like that, Cats and Prepping. Well, so if you get yourself a small solar generator, then you can do things like that. So one of the things you might want to consider, we got a very small bread machine, and so we can use it on the solar system. And there's going to be some things like that we're going to use the solar for. That's why we wanted solar so much. Dried beans, oats, wheat berries, and mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. I even do pasta that way too. Yep. And now I have an awful lot of pasta. I have an awful lot of beans, oats, flour, because I've been doing this for so long that I got from the LDS Provident Living Store. So they had number 10 cans of flour, spaghetti, in all, well, they have what they call spaghetti bites. It's little bitty 2-inch long pieces of spaghetti. They have macaroni. Great stuff that they have at the store. I'll put a link to their store. They have 48 stores in the U.S. We're lucky to have one here in Round Rock. But you can order by the case and have a case shipped to you. Very inexpensive. Now, the original, right now, the company has the contract is called Desiree Foods. And Desiree is basically a religious term for the desert out in Utah. But the company who had the contract before that is another fantastic supplier of number 10 cans and number 2.5 cans, what we call pantry cans at Thrive Life. But it's Rainy Day Foods. They have some fantastic stuff as well. So I would say either one of those two. No, but I will put them in the description tomorrow morning. So don't rewatch this tonight. Give me a chance first thing in the morning to get up, have a cup of coffee, and now start listing some of the books that I recommend in the book notes or in the description. So, okay, so now I want to get to my notes that I wanted to talk about, and we are at 48 minutes. Okay, so remember that every event has a timeline. So you're going to have that first week when people are living basically out of their refrigerators and out of their canned foods. It is guesstimated that the vast majority, and I'm not going to throw you a percentage figure, but the vast majority of Americans only have enough food in their house to last 3 to 5 days. I'm going to say probably 7 days. So, you want to do what they are doing for those first week or whatever. I would say that that they have run out of food when you're cooking and they come and ask you for food. At that point, then you want to cease your outdoor grilling and cooking and everything else like they are. And then you want to come in and do stealth stuff. So that's when you want to have your indoor water boiling and add that to, just add water stuff like Mountain House and things like that. Or Nutrient Survival has a lasagna and a couple other things. This is Homestyle Breakfast that I have displayed there. But just things where all you have to do is boil water, pour it in, let it seep, and then you have a meal. Or things that are ready to eat. So Nutrient Survival also has things like the chocolate chip cookie meals, and they have peanut butter bar meals. So those kinds of things, MREs, you're probably going to want to eat those for the next, I'm going to say 3 to 4 weeks. And that's that cleansing period where other people are going to be in the period of starvation. Then after that time, then we can start taking a look at probably cooking in your canned goods and things like that again. And it'll probably be a little bit safer. After, give it 4 to 5 weeks. Ooh, I'm starting to wheeze. Just 1 second. Okay, so some of the things you want to concern yourself with is learn how to do traps and snares. The Boy Scout Field Guide was how I learned, and then that was replaced by the Boy Scout Handbook in the 60s. But if you can get the old brown, and you can usually find it on eBay, the brown Boy Scout Field Guide, that is probably one of the best bushcrafting books that there are out there, and it gets into trapping and snaring extremely well. There's also some good trapping and snaring books. I think, what's the guy's name? He's out of Tennessee. I'll find his name, and he's got a good trapping and snaring book. Then of course you want fish traps and fish nets, gardening. All those things are going to become important. You want to learn how to can. You want to learn how to salt cure pork. That's what they used to do. That's what the British Navy did for the sailors at sea. That's how we basically came up with bacon, was they would salt cure pork bellies and then just slice it. And that's how we got bacon. And then, of course, salting and drying, or salting and smoking, or anything like that. So all those old forms of preservation of meat and things like that are going to be important to you. So let me see. Do I have anything else from the show and tell I wanted to share with you? I think that's pretty much it. I don't see anything else. No, that's pretty much it. So I think that kind of covers it. And we covered a very delicate topic without getting into the goriness that he gets into in the book. And I mean, he has some really gory pictures as well. But we can try to do this in a less than gory fashion, where we're talking about the subject. I think that most of the people who are here know that how bad it can get, or we imagine we know how bad it can get. I think Soko does a very good job of painting that for us. And if we heed that, I think we'll be steps ahead. But he does point out gold and silver has its place. Okay. It did in Bosnia. Food has its place. Dealing with warlords and stuff. He talks about having to move at night because of sniper fire during the daytime. He talks about candles, fire starting equipment being valuable, alcohol, drugs being valuable, drugs both legal and illegal, of course, being extremely valuable. The legal kind, especially antibiotics, were just unbelievable. He says the number of people who got burns cooking over open fires for the first time, instead of a gas stove or an electric stove or whatever, were just astronomical. The number of infections that they got from simple cuts and scrapes, people not being used to using hatches and axes and hatchets and processing wood and cutting themselves, and then that gets infected, and just all kinds of stuff. Basically, if you get shot, you're a goner. Because there was no medical care, and so you couldn't take care of the infection, the internal bleeding, trauma, stuff like that. So it's just a really dire circumstance. Absolutely, and so we went. So I have all of my teeth are porcelain, and so every 6 months I go in and they clean between the gum line and the porcelain, and then I have 4 posts in the bottom and 4 posts in the upper top that were drilled into my jawline. So they check to make sure that there's no infection around there. And I did have a little bit down here. So we got that cleaned up today. But now I forget where I was going to go with that. Oh, but anyhow, so we had to go there and have that done this morning. Then I went to the Then we decided that we would go to Sam's Club, and then after Sam's Club, we would go have our anniversary dinner. Have it at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. Just have a real big combination lunch, dinner, if you will, and then we just have that one big meal for today. So while we were at Sam's, the way I prep is we get the 2 bottle containers of, like, for example, Listerine. That's what we got today. If we use one, then we go to Sam's and buy 2. So that's how we stockpile. Then I am at the halfway point for a box of Caesar food. So I've got this set over here for my pantry haul for Saturday. So I like to have 5 of these at all times. So that gives me 200 meals for the girls. And then I have another one that I buy. I forget the name of it, but it's a little bit has gravy in it. So I like to pour that over the food for the girls. Then we like to keep. I have 40 pounds in the kitchen pantry in a bucket where we feed them out of that. And then I have another 20 pounds in a bucket in the extra bedroom. Then I have 4 bags, 4 20-pound bags. So we probably have somewhere around 140 pounds of dog food in the house at any one time. I did at one time, I bought a can, oh gosh, probably 20 years ago, of Emergency Essentials. Had number 10 cans, 25-year shelf life of dog food. And I bought it. And then after I bought it, I didn't want to return it, but I thought, this is stupid. I think I paid $35 for a number 10 can of dog food. And I said, God, stupid. I can get it cheaper by buying a bag and then packaging it myself in Mylar bags. And so that's when we got the big dog food buckets, that are sealable. Yeah, I watched Sutton's Days. She is fantastic. The other one is Rose Red Homestead, and she's a professor who teaches all the stuff about canning and things like that. So the 2 channels I go to for canning information are Rose Red Homestead and Sutton's Days. Strongly recommend both of those. Absolutely. Yeah, make friends with your local beekeeper. I did. So Round Rock Honey we were one of his primary outlets when I had the store. So we sold their stuff all the time. And so Carl and I get along pretty good. And as a matter of fact, I got him a new hive here recently. A neighbor had a hive being established in her yard, and I called him and said, "Hey, you want to come get it?" And so he got it, and I said, "I'm not sure if they're honeybees or not." And he says, "Yeah, they are." So that was kind of good. But we need to do everything we can to preserve the honeybees as well, because they're being eradicated, and we need them to pollinate a lot of our flora and fauna. I absolutely agree, which is why we had the rain catchment system put in here, especially here in Central Texas. Now, I think I told you I'm about a mile away from the river, and so Christmas maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago, my daughter asked me what I wanted for Christmas. And I wanted one of those big, heavy-duty carts, garden carts, because I have 2 5-gallon. No, they're 7-gallon. I have 2 7-gallon jugs, and I was going to go down and fill those up at the river, and then use that to pull it back up. And I started thinking, gosh, I'm getting old, and I've got a total hip replacement, and do I really want to start pulling 14 gallons of water a mile and up? We're probably 300 feet above the river. So I started thinking about it. I said, this may not be the best idea. Even I've still got the wagon. But I said, I got to come up with a better idea, because number one, I really don't want to be out by myself getting water. who's going to, be protecting the home while I'm gone, or being protecting Helen? And so, I really don't want to leave the home that much to go get water. So you're absolutely correct. Got to think out the water situation and how you're going to get it. Right now, my solution is I've got 2 different water tanks. I've got a 55 gallon and a 350 gallon. So I got 405 gallons of rainwater catchment. Utah Mike says that the LDS shipping is super cheap when you do, especially when you do it by the case. Absolutely. I never knew that the yucca was edible. The roots, the stalk, and the flowers. Learned that this year. Well, the yucca, as a matter of fact, in El Paso, where I'm from, the Boy Scout Council there is called the Yucca Council, because the yucca is the #1. Yucca and prickly pear, the 2 predominant growth things. Well, mesquite in that part of West Texas, and so yeah. We grew up with eating yucca and eating prickly pear, both. Yeah, you can eat bamboo shoots. Absolutely. So what I've been doing, Phylloxerus, is I have on auto purchase every 6 months 2 additional black filters for the for the Berkey. And so I probably have, I don't know. I don't know how many I have. But each pair of black filters is 6,000 gallons. So, I'm pretty happy with that. I think I can extend that through pouring it through a pour over system with filters for coffee filters, using coffee filters and stuff like that. So I think, there's some ways we can extend that, but you're right. We've got to take into consideration, how are we going to filter our water? And there are people who live day to day. Oh, yeah, I know. With St. Vincent de Paul, the number of people that I help and then tell them about food banks. So there's a church in Andice, just northwest of here, Santa Rosa de Lima, and it's another Catholic church. And they have a fantastic food pantry. They give away fresh meat. This one neighbor I took there, I gave him a ride there to get some food. They even gave him 2 pounds of shrimp. He got 3 loaves of fresh bread, all kinds of canned goods. He got all kinds of fresh produce. Just unbelievable what they gave. So that was at the morning session. And then I was going to take him to an evening session. They do it 1 morning a month and 1 afternoon a month. So I figured I'd get there a half hour early. Well, I didn't know it, but their website didn't have the correct times. And so we ended up being there 15 minutes after it opened. So getting there 15 minutes after it opened, when he checked in, he was number 405 on the list to receive food. So, that tells you how many people there are in the community who live off of food pantries and, just can't afford even the basic sustenance in their own home. Let me see. Yeah, because I'm sure that my Azure standard salt is going to run dry some point in the future. That's absolutely certain. You're correct. Let me see. Yep. If you don't practice with what you got, if you don't learn what you have and learn how to use it, that's absolutely correct. Let me see what else we have here, and then we can close this down because we're right at a minute and 4 minutes, an hour and 4 minutes. Rose red is excellent. Yep. So Phylloxerus says that he bought a couple cases of ramen. because they are light to pack, and I doubt they can get much worse. Actually, think of it as just being a fancy form of spaghetti. And I'm going to be posting. I like this guy, but I don't like this guy. It's Sam, the cooking guy. And he has a video that I've been really arguing over whether I want to do it as one of my 1 minute SHTF cooking shows. He just has such a foul mouth. I love his cooking, but I don't like his mouth. I don't know if I want to be associated with promulgating that kind of vulgarity, but I may share it. He's got some fantastic videos on how to make ramen a lot more palatable. Little Lone Prepper, I will put the site for it's just look up Provident Living Center or Provident Living Store. And I can do that here real quick. Let's do that. We can stay on a little bit longer than normal. LDS Provident Living food storage, and find a store near me. They also have a copy of their food storage book, their prepping guidelines and everything else, and it's just fantastic. Okay, so here is the Home Storage Center's homepage. So click on that and save it, and that should help you. There was a video that Helen showed me. No, it was on the news. Some guy in South Austin, his Chihuahua was being attacked by a coyote. And so he went up and got between the coyote and his Chihuahua. He got bit on the legs pretty bad, but he picked the coyote up by the tail and flung it into a Dempsey dumpster to protect his Chihuahua. So, and my nephew had a Chihuahua, and they lived kind of semi-rural, and a chicken hawk came down and grabbed the Chihuahua. He got his talons stuck in the Chihuahua's head and tried to carry it away, and it basically slammed into the fence. It couldn't get enough lift to get the Chihuahua out of there. So when it slammed the Chihuahua into the fence, of course, the bird fell on the other side of the fence. The Chihuahua fell on the right side of the fence, and they were able to get it and take it in and get a whole bunch of repair to its skull from the talons that were stuck in it. Okay, so I think we're going to call it an evening. I hope we handled this delicate subject in a way that it wasn't in violation of any of the guidelines for YouTube, and that we did it in a way that we don't lose monetization, because remember, 1/3 of everything I get goes to our local food bank, and 1/3 goes to the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, so that we can help people who are having monetary issues pay their rent, pay their electric bills, pay their car bills, whatever the case might be. Okay, so we're looking at the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So remember that we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, respectful, understanding of each other. Hello, Claude. Welcome. Because togetherness is the key, and togetherness is what's going to get us out. Find out your neighbors now. Remember, this is going to take a community of us. We can't do it by ourselves. And when SHTF happens, it's the wrong time to find out whether or not you can trust your neighbors. Start making those connections now. Start finding the people you know and developing trust, so that you can work with them so that you can survive better, because this is not going to be a lone person event. This is going to be something that's going to take a group of people working together to survive. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Tomorrow morning, I'll have the links for those books in there. I'll also put in the link for the Provident Living Center in case you want to order any of their long-term food storage items. And I'll also put in a link for rainy day foods. Those are some of the best ones and best prices that there are out there for long-term food storage. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening. Stay warm. Bye-bye.